Delighted to be joined by our next guest, which is Joe Bell from Argyle Life. Joe, thanks so much for talking to us. Not a particularly fun time to be talking about Plymouth Argyle, is it?
Getting bored of this, Gab. You only ever have me on when we're being miserable sods, aren't you? So,
Well, that's
yeah,
been quite a common trend over the last 3 years, Joe.
yeah. To be fair, this is a feeling we're quite used to, losing every week and not being competitive on the road. So we're well versed to it. Yeah, not the start to the season we wanted. I think I remember talking to you in the deep dive that we had a really difficult start on paper, Gab. But none of us expected the start to be as difficult as it has been. We are desperately crying out for help, basically, both on the pitch and off the pitch. And yeah, it's very much a case at the moment, certainly in my mindset, of let's get the other side of the Luton game, let's regroup, and let's really kickstart our season then, because the next 2 weeks are just going to be incredibly tough for us with where we are as a group at the moment.
I think what the Pilgrims need now is an anchor, and I think you get an anchor from experience. And I suppose what I'm looking at Plymouth Argyle as a club right now is you've got David Fox, who's an inexperienced director of football. You've got, I think, the head recruitment's inexperienced. Tom Cleverley's having his second full season as manager. You've signed a load of players who don't have a lot of experience themselves, and so off the back of relegation, when the fan base is already a little bit sort of edgy, perhaps, about some of the mistakes that were made in the championship. Do you feel like you've gone too far down the line of this kind of developmental project and not enough in terms of replacing some of those leaders and characters that were so influential in your title win in 2023?
Nail on the head, Gab. We got very fortunate with what we landed on with Steven Schumacher. At that point, the football club felt they were invincible, that the risk-taking decisions they would make would pay off every time. And since then, it's been one mistake after another mistake after another mistake. Look, Miran Muslic, extrapolated over a longer period of games, would have kept Argyle in the division. That's fact. It's his points per game was going to do that. But he ran out of time. The pin absolutely should have been plugged or pulled from the grenade earlier than it was last season, but they didn't. It was almost like they didn't want to accept they'd made a mistake, Gab. And that's fair enough. They're proud people. They've got the club to where they'd got on being risk taking and evaluating different processes and data sets. The only issue the fan base have is there isn't a single process or single data set that suggested Wayne Rooney was the right man to come in. When you look at where we were just 12 months ago, 12 months ago, we'd beaten Hull on the final day. We'd stayed up. We had an amazing platform to take this football club to a whole new level. And essentially, we turned the shotgun on ourselves. And we're now trying to repair that damage, and it's going to take a while. I was quite ambitious in thinking that we might be in and around the playoff hunt. That is absolutely not going to be the case. The summer transfer window probably underlines to us that the rhetoric we've been given of a top six playing budget, it may well have been a top six playing budget in 2022-23. The landscape in League One has changed massively in the 2 years that we were out of it. And the deals that we may have been able to conclude 3 years ago, we now can't get done because, the Birminghams, the Wrexhams, the Stockports, the Lutons, even towards the back end of the window, have just changed the landscape. And financially, we can't compete. And we've signed a lot of project players. And you are right. Right now, what we need is the here and now. We need Jamie Patterson to stay fit. We need Joe Edwards to be over his injury issues. We need Connor Hazard back as quickly as we can, because there's three key players who, in all fairness, will be starters when they're fit. So Tom Cleverley has very much had his hands tied in the transfer market, and he's absolutely had rotten luck since he's come in the door, because the injury list is just never ending. But touch wood, we appear to be coming out the other side of
Is
it
your
now, and
forehead wood,
almost
Joe? I didn't know that.
it's pretty dense, Gab. But all being well, other than Zavamichi and Julio Pleguezuelo, by the sounds of it, everyone should be back in the next fortnight to 3 weeks. So there's light at the end of the tunnel in that respect, but I just can't get away from the fact I cannot wait for the 20th of September when we're actually playing a team who are around us.
Yeah, Joe. I mean, fairly close to home for you for Inter Plymouth Argyle. Has their start to the season surprised you, or were you expecting them to have a slow start?
Yeah, I probably expected them to struggle to begin with. Obviously, as you mentioned, a lot of sort of development players perhaps got a wrong barometer of what they're like. Obviously, they came to Playmore and absolutely ripped us apart. And certainly, in terms of a Plymouth team coming to Playmore, we probably thought that's probably one of the best teams we've played in years for Plymouth. But yeah, it's obviously from Joe's point of view, there's so many players that perhaps haven't played or haven't featured so far that I think would give confidence. Certainly a couple of deals that they've done at the back end of the window, which I actually really like. I love Laurent Tolaj. I think he's going to be brilliant for Plymouth. Really liked him at Aldershot. Obviously, they brought in a couple of players who've been there and done it in League One as well. Alex Mitchell and Owen Dale, I think, are really good additions. So, as much as Plymouth fans have looked at the mistakes that they've made in the window and felt we haven't bought in a great deal, I actually, looking at it from afar, I actually think they've done some decent business. It's just unfortunately they're relying on the 5 or 6 players that perhaps you do have a question mark on to be the answer right now. Whereas I do think of the business they've done, there's sort of 6 or 7 that I think, yeah, you know what, that's decent.
I think that's fair enough, Joe. I think the issue Argyle fans have got is when you lose the 14, 15 players we did in the summer, everyone was producing the same spreadsheet, right? Who was replacing who and who's the direct replacement. I don't think that was fair, frankly, because you're losing championship players and you're bringing in essentially League One players. I think the comparisons we've made is the 22-23 team, the last team we had in this league. And without being harsh to the lads that have played so far, I struggle to see on the body of evidence that we've got any of the starting 11 from the opening day, for example, that would get in that side of Steven Schumacher's team. I don't see anybody who's a direct improvement than what we had then. And I think that's the issue that the fan base have got, because we were given the rhetoric that we're going to have twice the budget this time around. And this is a top 6 playing budget. And whilst these players may well go on to have great careers, and let's hope they do, and let's hope our form turns and we can, 12th place is probably an outstanding season given how it started. So if we can get ourselves in and around that mid-table hunt by the end of the year, whilst it'll be hugely frustrating for everybody this side of Exeter, it will be, it will be seen as a result, and then they've got a platform to build on next year. The issue is that the messaging that came out in the last week of the transfer window, we had our backsides handed to us by Cardiff on Saturday in no uncertain terms. Tom Cleverley comes out in the press and says we desperately need an experienced central midfielder. We go and sign a 19-year-old who's got 3 senior appearances to his name. Like that's the bit that I think the fan base struggled to get over with at the end. And look, Law McCabe's obviously got something about him because Thomas Tuchel's had him in and around the England squad for the last couple of days. So it's frustrating, but we've just got to trust in Tom Cleverley. And the one thing that is unanimous, I think, around the fan base is whilst 1 or 2 of the selection decisions in the last couple of games have perhaps been queried a little bit, everybody can see that he's trying his best with what he's got. He just doesn't have those 1 or 2 experienced players in that group just to hold it all together. I would absolutely give both of my lungs for Jordan Houghton in the midfield at the moment. I really would. But we don't have him. He, respectfully chose a family decision rather than a footballing one, and as a footballing decision goes, it's a pretty good one as well, with Stevenage are. So it's just been a frustrating 18, 20 months that have just culminated in this summer, and the club have a bit of work to do to get the trust and patience back, I think.
And that's the one thing that I think I would looking in, I think would probably hang your hat on so far is that hopefully Law McCabe can come in and be as good as potentially he's been billed to be. I mean, that's the one position. I mean, Gab will know how big a fan I am of Adam Randall. Obviously, it's no
I've heard
surprise.
about him like 4 years ago.
It's no surprise to me that he's gone to
Yeah.
Bristol City and they already love him. And I think that's probably the one position that I'm surprised that Plymouth haven't got sorted yet, because they've obviously got a manager in Tom Cleverley who was a pretty decent midfielder himself. And they've got a very, very good person in David Fox, who was a fantastic holding midfielder himself. So you'd imagine, fingers crossed, that Law McCabe has got something about him and potentially can come in and be the answer, because certainly when I look at one thing that they should get right is that middle of the park, because they've got two people at the club making decisions who were good midfielders themselves.
Fingers crossed. Well, Joe, certainly a lot of work ahead for Plymouth Argyle after a slow start. So look forward to catching up later in the season. Hopefully you've made a bit of progress by that point.
If I get a message from you in 6 weeks, Gab, and we haven't won a game, I think I'll just ignore it, because it's about time you got me on in a good period, I think.
About time you had one.
It's about time we had one, you're right.
Absolutely. Top man, Joe. Great to have you on, and look forward to speaking soon.
Cheers, Gab. Cheers, Joe. Cheers, lads.
Bye.